This Sunday, we begin a new liturgical year. And during this year, we will use what are known as the cycle C, as in celestial readings. Therefore, on most Sundays, our gospel reading will be taken from Luke. The Gospel of Luke is a favorite of many, since it is only in Luke that one will find the stories of the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son. And it is only in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke that we find the stories of the birth of Jesus. Within the liturgical year, during the season of Advent, the readings for each Sunday center on a particular theme. This Sunday, the focus of the readings is on the need to be vigilant, to pay attention, and to be able to discern what is truly important. The setting for our first reading from the book of the prophet Jeremiah is the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in the latter part of the 6th century before Christ. It is a dark time for the Jewish people, and all seems lost. In such times, it is hard to pay attention to anything other than the doom and gloom that seem to be everywhere. But in the midst of this bleak situation, Jeremiah announces God's plan for the redemption of Israel. God's plan is not to bring about a military victory, an economic recovery, or a technological breakthrough. Rather, it is the promise of a descendant of the great King David who will bring safety and security and justice. Spoiler alert, although I hope it isn't news to you. Christians believe that Jesus is that promised descendant. In our second reading from Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, which is most likely the earliest letter we have from Paul, we hear about Paul's desires for the people while they await the second coming of Jesus. It is likely that we, you and me, don't spend a lot of time thinking about the second coming, unless our tastes in films center upon the destruction of life as we know it, whether it be by way of an errant asteroid, a nuclear miscalculation, or the rise of the zombies. I wouldn't be surprised if many of us are more frazzled by the preparation required for our annual celebration of the first coming of Jesus. But the Thessalonians believed that the second coming was just around the corner. And it was that very belief that threatened their ability to see Jesus at work in their daily lives. Their vigilance was misdirected. And so Paul is alerting them to the need to focus their efforts on loving and caring for one another. In other words, to live in the here and now, which is in fact where we will find Jesus. In our gospel reading, Jesus is warning his disciples of the same phenomenon that the Thessalonians confronted. Even in the pre-cable news era, Jesus recognized how easy it is to miss out on what is right in front of us, to miss out on what is truly important, because our attention is focused on the worst-case scenarios of events that are beyond our control. And even if those worst-case scenarios come to pass, Jesus assures his disciples and us that he will be there. And therefore, they should stand rather than cower. Jesus also tells us that we need to guard against the many ways we seek to escape our fears about the threats that are lurking everywhere. Just as debilitating fear can destroy our vigilance, so too can immersing ourselves in our jobs or alcohol or the anxieties of daily life, to mention the examples that Jesus used. The challenge is to remain vigilant about the things that really matter. The things that keep us from focusing on what is truly important may be different from those that confronted the people of ancient Jerusalem, the Thessalonians, or the first disciples of Jesus. But I hope that we can all acknowledge our tendency to let other things get in the way of seeing how God is at work in our lives. As we enter Advent, I hope you will be filled with the deep joy that comes from knowing that Christ the Lord is always returning to his people. Our celebration is not about an historical event of the past or about an anticipated future event. Rather, the God who made us out of love and longs to embrace each one of us once and for all is forever returning to our wandering, distracted hearts and saying, "Come back to me." Too often, what ought to be our season of hope has become a time of distraction and anxiety. Advent invites us to be renewed in hope that is grounded in God's desire to become one of us in Jesus, and hope that becomes real when we seek to become one with Jesus. During this Advent, let us pray that we can remain vigilant, that we can see what is truly important, that we can feel God's presence in our lives every day, and that we will do our part to remain one with God through prayer and by caring for one another, as Jesus taught us.